as Fortune clearly said, the Migrant Media Network was aimed at engaging the diaspora on constructive social media truth. The social media truth, as we know, truth can be relative. So the social media truth is about how do you interpret what you read and the messages that are online. How do you understand that message? What is, if I post myself standing in front of a Porsche, yeah, I just arrived yesterday from Ghana, for instance, and I'm posting in front of a Porsche, and I'm saying, that's my life. You know, so how do you tell people that this guy is still looking for a study? Actually, yes, he doesn't have a Porsche. You know, so it is about engaging people to ethically consume the information they get on social media, and that is the underlying fact. And so, on that we deal with understanding how migrants and potential migrants interact with social media channels. And in this extent, towards how does this impact their decisions to migrate or not to migrate? In general, how does the interaction with social media enable migration as an opportunity as well? Because if, as you said before, if there's this lady who wants to migrate back at home, but is questioning herself, do I really go back? Or do I, we call it here, do I go underground? So that means you throw away your documents and go underground. But these people have to be informed about the opportunities that are coming up in Ghana. I was in Kenya recently and met a former friend of mine who was starting a logistics company. The guy is living, I always repeat, a better life than I'm living in Germany. There are big and good opportunities. But because we have this mind that you talked about, I can only make it when I stay here, we live in this consumption. So return entrepreneurship and also transnational entrepreneurship. Transnational entrepreneurship meaning if Bismarck here stays here and thinks, there's a business opportunity that I can connect with Ghana and trying to explore those opportunities. How can social media contribute to that? How does social media activate and contribute to return migrant stigmatization? There are those people who, unfortunately, have been deported. It's not my work to start questioning those policies because I cannot change. But then when these people arrive at home, they are in a situation where they're sometimes not even welcome at home. And how does social media contribute to that? As we heard before, the stories of why did you come here without making it big? And this is very much communicated on social media. And so we have had cases of people committing suicide just because of that. And what role does social media play? And how can we intervene? How do the human smugglers use social media as a marketing tool? They do use it as a marketing tool. And then how can we inform them, the potential migrants, the residents, that social media and every message they see there does not necessarily have to be true, and it is not true that it may be coming from whatever individuals. It can be coming from human smugglers. So that is the information we're trying to deal with that. And why we thought social media is, as we understand, is that social media, and this is something that I got from the co-creation we did with the participants, is that social media has become, even for us here in Germany, has become a primary source of information for many people. And it is very much true from the sub-Saharan Africa. If they take this information that is there as a fact, and there is much of misleading information, and make their decision to travel based on those messages and posts, that is something that we now have to deal with, and that's what we are trying to do about that process. So to do that, that's what the project, using the various understandings of this particular topic, we invited some young diasporans living here to be able to make sure that we don't tell our own stories, but actually get the stories from the diaspora, get the stories from the Ghanaian diaspora, so that in that case we don't create something for ourselves, but create something that is co-created with the diaspora, and that is much more aimed to those stories that they have gone through and they understand in their countries of origin. And so the aim of that, the aims of the Ghana project, the aim of the Ghana project is engaging the members of the Ghanaian diaspora on social media sensitization, and at the same time we're trying to provide offline tools like what Jody is going to be talking about later the few times, in order to make sure we spread out information on remote regions of Ghana. So we created, at the same time, we were able to create a network of particular pick-up points or stations where people can go and be able to learn about migration, opportunities back at home, human smuggling, and all those topics that we were covering. And it's very important that, because we have been dealing with DeFi it now as a project, to be able to mitigate propaganda, hate speech, and all this kind of misinformation that happens on social media. So we bring all our experiences from DeFi it now. We brought them also to this project to make sure there is a mature consumption of information on social media. And as important is to make informed decision-making process, or to enable informed decision-making process in regard to migration. Inform also, at the same time, instead of telling people, please don't migrate irregularly, then we tell them what opportunities do exist at home, and how can you explore these opportunities. So we don't stop at do not migrate irregularly, but rather go a step further and try to show people what opportunities do exist at home. And a wonderful group of people here, and we have, and because I want to mention this, we believe on a south-to-south solutions. And so when it came to training about social media and the use of social media, we did not just get someone from German, but really ask someone from the south, in global south, Jexana here, to come and train us and the others about the social media sensitization. So really, from the south to the south as a concept. And I think that is a nice way to be able to tell people and to communicate people at an high level, and also covers a little bit of some cultural aspect that may come. To solve all that, I'm a design thinking trainer, so I always try to put design thinking wherever possible. And so we used a design thinking process of co-creation, not only to explore messages on social media, but also to co-create and work on the materials and data and documentation for creating the field guide and all other materials. Yes. During that process of design thinking and co-creation, we identified 4 individuals. So these 4 individuals, we are calling them the personas. So we have the travel agent. This is a picture from the Foreign Affairs, and we like that because it talks about the uncovering or undressing the travel agent. So he has a nice office, looks like an official guy, but in real sense, in many concepts, he's a human smuggler. We have to undress him, to uncover him, to show him who he really is. And that's one person we identify. Then we identified, I don't know if that name is written well. The Boga? Is it written well? No. No.
It's not an English word.
It's not an English word.
It's a PG word, I think.
So I've been planning how to pronounce that word for the last 5 months. Boga. So the Boga is that the Astra guy. I always put myself. So it comes with bling, bling, bling coming down up to here. The trouser is up to here, and he walks in a different style. And when he comes home, he has made life. As we heard before, that is not necessarily true, right? But when he comes, he tells you going to Europe is very easy. It's like A and B, you are there, which is necessarily not true. And the next, down once. Whoops, sorry. And the next individual we realized is the potential migrant who doesn't really know, where do I get the right information? How do I get informed? And so this person now is looking for information wherever place possible. And he's ready to believe anything as long as it is on social media, and he doesn't know how to consume, how to evaluate this information. And then we have the other persona is the migration administrator, who he has to adhere to a particular policy that has been set for him. And he doesn't know now, how do I give this information to this particular individual, to the potential migrant, that it's not automatic just because, it's not automatic that there is a big ship waiting for you in Libya with cinema and a pool, and you can directly walk in and you travel to Europe. So he has this information, but he does not know how to pass that information. And so, identifying these personas, we're trying to develop materials around that. And one of the materials we developed, and which I would like my colleague Jody Ross to come and introduce, is the field guide.
Jody, and I've had the great honour of working with the Rogue Agency on, first of all, the Defy Hate Now, Social Media Hate Speech Mitigation Field Guide, which we then developed the specific parts about verifying misinformation, rumours, using social media ethically and responsibly, developed into this project with Thomas. And it's been amazing. Like, I'm actually from a migration background myself. All of my forebears migrated to New Zealand or Australia. between 1855 and 19 something, from Germany, Scotland, England, and Ireland. And I'm the only one who's come back. So I actually do understand also the issues about migrating to Germany. And I've had the luxury of being able to do that as a freelance writer and artist, which is something that wasn't sort of known that much. I think it's like I discovered it because people I knew here were able to do that. And I'm also very grateful to be able to live in Germany and do this work. And so I sort of have a personal connection as well to this the possibilities of migration. And I came here to live as an artist full time. And I kind of, as a personal thing, not representing the project or the agency, I believe that we need to live in a world without borders and without nation states, and that everyone should be free to make the life they want for themselves. I think a lot of people want to stay in their home countries where their families are, where they're connected. And so putting together this material was really amazing. And so we had the input from all of the participants in the first workshop. So thank you so much for your perspectives and your knowledge, because it really gave so much fine-grained detail to what we could put together. And then Sarah did some amazing research. Blaine also compiled stories. And Cara did a fantastic job of laying it out. And so for me, it was also really, really important that we focus on what are the informed choices and what are the other possibilities. If you've got like $5,000 you're paying to a people smuggler, how could you possibly use that to build a life for yourself in a different way? And so basically we kind of go through looking at migration contexts, the dangers of irregular migration. We have sort of discussion questions, and having the publication as a sort of physical object is really important because there's not always internet access, and people are not always necessarily looking at the official channels of information. Was something that I understood from the participants, that okay, you maybe won't look at the government website. We're also trying to highlight like these are sort of the researched official places to get information to then make a decision about how you want to undertake that migration journey or not. And so, yeah, I think that's probably all I have to say. If anyone has any small questions. Also, I mean, learning about how the people smugglers and traffickers use social media to engage people and the kind of misinformation they give, and trying to help build up that kind of media literacy about how to find correct information and how to share it. And I think I'm really interested to hear back more from the group about the training that they've done since we put this together. So it was a pilot project and we're developing it more for the next year, hopefully. And there are a couple of things that we kind of missed, like what are the next steps? So how can you then connect with the community innovators, entrepreneurs, learn skills, or what are there's some specific information about the steps coming to Germany to work or study, and so we'll keep developing it. And so this is a really important forum as well to kind of understand better that sort of fine detail. So thank you all. Oh, and it also comes with a USB key with additional material and a facilitation guide, and again, and quite a lot of detail that we've tried to make as relevant and useful as possible. So that's always my aim, is that I'm not making this for someone in an office in Germany to look at. I'm making it for people who are really giving training person to person to use. And so I'm very open to your criticism, feedback, input if there are things that you think could be better. And yes, thank you. I think one of the challenges, one of the hesitations I had about the project was being very careful that it wasn't playing into an anti-migration narrative. And so I really, really, really worked to make sure that we were giving information and choices from a very neutral kind of place. And for me, it was probably the challenge was synthesizing the different kinds of input and information from very different voices and trying to make it something coherent that could be then well used and that was clear and, possible to navigate. Also, it was a bit challenging because I was back in Australia at the time, so I then migrated back to Germany, partly for this project because I feel really passionate about it, and it was really exciting to see it take shape and then to see it being used, and to hope that it can play a kind of a useful role in helping people make life choices in a way that will bring them to a good place, wherever that is. Yeah.
The starting point was, of course, the 4 years of research that we had in terms of how social media and conflict in itself work. And I thought it was really interesting to see like how much of that material is actually relevant to migration issues already. Like the means of getting information is always the most difficult element in a lot of this kind of stuff. So, you know, a large part of our work is then to channel the right type of information and to be able to give it in a way that people don't have difficulties in getting. So enabling the access to the information is that element that we're trying to build into these resources, and that's why it takes place also in different forms and formats. Like they each have a very specific sense of direction, let's say. As I mentioned before, I mean, one of the main things that we do with Defy Hate Now and now also with Migrant Media Network is look at what are the quickest, easiest, most direct ways for people to access information. And in South Sudan, we started to look at USSD delivery of information. Just for those of you who do not know what specifically USSD stands for, it is Unstructured Supplementary Service Data. Okay? And as that name implies, it is service data. And we don't use USSD so much in Germany, but in many countries where, let's say, being online or having to pay for bundles and stuff to be online is an issue, we rely on the structures that the telecommunications companies themselves have. So if we buy a bundle from provider A or provider B or whatever, we can generally use their services without extra charges. And all those companies, they have these little codes in them, like like this one here, star 711, star 107 hash. Yeah, this is a typical USSD code, which can get you into your account, for example. So you get a menu that says, I want to top up my bundle, I want to buy, I don't know, Christmas present for my kids, blah, 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 and that brings you then to another menu, and you can do those actions. The point is, why don't we use this kind of system for delivering information, for example, about migration or other means of using social media, etc. It's a vastly untapped information resource. It's extremely easy to use, and you can design any kind of information structure and system for it. You can also connect it to incentives. Like if you can get a credit if you use a certain kind of information or pass it on to somebody, so we decided to look at a way to use this in Ghana. We're working together with an organization called Kumasi Hive, which is a media and technology lab in the town of Kumasi, and it's great to have Gameli here, who is part of that organization. We're partners with Kumasi Hive for some years in a number of open science and open hardware and global innovation gathering scenarios. And they've taken on the task of piloting what is now being coined like Migrate Safely as a USSD application. Can you just run through the other slides? I mean, it's always a little clunky of how to talk about or show something like that without actually doing it. The first prototype for testing is out there, and what's most important right at this point is to see whether or not this information that is being built into the system makes any sense or not. So there's user testing going on. I mean, even these these terms themselves might be a little too clunky. Like, okay, do I want regular migration, irregular migration, or alternatives to regular migration? The next step is to sort of go from this sort of like wonky policy talk to kind of like street speak. Yeah, and this is a process of iteration. First we're trying to get in the actual chunks of information that we want to work with. The next step will be, there's a whole pile of slides, so just slowly run through, because we're not going to be able to get through all this kind of stuff. Like, there's many layers of types of information. So, as I said, the current phase, or what's just kind of ending, is really to get the basic material in there. And the feedback loop that we're working with right now, where friends from Brazil are doing on the ground, is how to make this then in this more user-friendly speak. And we'd love to get also like feedback from you guys who are in Ghana on how this can work better. The programming of USSD is fairly straightforward. It's an old school technology which is used by just about every single person in many of the countries that we're working, as long as they have a mobile phone.
And we have from Mr. Stefan out here, a SIM card from Ghana. If you could like just later to test it.
Okay, we can maybe do that when we network around. Okay, cool. Yeah, he's got more of an advantage to us because he was actually there.
Yeah.
But the only hindrance to more of these kinds of systems being used for different types of information distribution and so on is you have to negotiate with the telco because they own the codes. And this was a little bit of our problem in South Sudan because it costs them very little to actually provide this information in their system, but they see it as a big money-making thing for themselves. And we somehow think that they should have some corporate social responsibility to provide these kinds of informations for the people using their systems. So the better the relationship can be with the telco, the easier it is to get access to the codes. And the other hindrance is that, of course, if you're on the Vodafone network, the codes are different than if you're on MTN network, for example. So we want to, in the Ghana pilot, we're trying to see like what deals can we get with the telcos and get access to codes for all of them. So ultimately, it doesn't really matter, what the code is, because you get provided with the codes depending on which telco you happen to be with. But as far as we're concerned, this is probably the quickest and easiest way to get direct information to people. No apps to download, no other kind of tricky things going on online. I can't get this, blah blah blah. Don't have the right browser, etc., etc. This is really, really simple, straightforward information, and it's much more interactive, for example, than SMS, where you kind of have to know who you're specifically sending something to. It's one of the systems that helps bring together all the various information systems that we've already been developing. And so part of that package, the sort of for me, this is all kind of part of the field guide as well as a resource. We've started also working with this small company that's based actually in Nakuru in Kenya called Hyrac Tech. They make a very simple Raspberry Pi based offline server. There's one sitting right over there. There's two versions actually of it. There's this is what I call the big box. There's a Raspberry Pi Zero version, which is about half that size. Fits very easily in your pocket, and you can emulate basically whatever kind of curated web content you want with it. So it's a very powerful tool to use in offline and mobile scenarios. We put on the major, let's say, free access information packages onto these offline servers so that they can be then used in training sessions or at these access points, information centers, wherever. You can connect to the high-rack box just any way you connect any other router or server with the Wi-Fi connection, and then you can immediately access that material. The other thing that we use the high-rack box for already in other projects is actually just very basic internet literacy. So you can learn how does this internet thing work, how do browser structures work, query structure, all that kind of stuff. So you can use it for all kinds of media literacy training, not just for serving up certain kinds of information. Yeah, so this is just a little bit of how-to. You do it. Basically, you look for it in the network, and is that one on?
Yeah, it's on.
So, I mean, if anybody wants to just kind of try it out, we'll put this slide back on later on. But yeah, you have to disconnect yourself from other networks. You pick. I guess it's high-rack box. It's not the mini.
Yeah,
so you'll see that on your list of
MMN high-rack box.
Yeah, MMN high-rack box. You'll see that on your list of networks. And then when you've connected to it, you have to open up a browser, any browser on your device, and put in this IP address. And that IP address will give you the direct link to the material on the high-rack box. It doesn't necessarily work just automatically on its own. So it's very important that we, that we do training. That's one of the reasons we do training of trainers, and we very specifically look for, community multipliers, for example. Either they're teachers already, people who are already in a kind of a media center type thing, or youth leaders, people who also feel that they have ownership of this type of material, want to be able to, interact, with their communities. You just stick it on a desk somewhere, it'll be gone. That is difficult, but that's part of our work, to establish that kind of network.